Hey guys, welcome back to the Ministry Hacks Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined with Ian Dizon.
Yeah, you got it.
Longtime worship leader, pastor at Calvary Church in Aurora, Colorado, to talk about what it really takes to cultivate a heart of worship, a strong worship ministry. And so whether you're a worship leader, a pastor, or just someone who loves worship music, I think you're going to enjoy this episode today. So Ian, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the
great
show.
to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So first off, tell us a little bit about your journey into worship ministry.
Yeah, so I grew up in a musical household, and I was the oddball that wasn't musical at all. Like I just didn't sing, I didn't play an instrument, but I loved music. And then I joined an organization called Youth with a Mission. And I was with them for about 3 years. On one of my first mission trips with YWAM, they said, "Hey, we need someone to lead worship, and you're it."
Oh,
and
nice.
and I was like, "Well, I should probably learn how to play an instrument and learn how to sing." So I didn't do any of those things. I think the leadership just saw something, or they knew the Lord wanted to do something, and so bought a guitar, bought a really cheap guitar, and learned 4 chords and like 5 songs. And for 3 months, we did 5 songs and 4 chords,
This is it.
and that was it. And then right after that trip, I did a school with Youth with a Mission. I did their school of worship for like another 6 months, and I really started to learn a little bit more about worship music. And I just would ask questions. So I'm self-taught for guitar. Before the YouTube days, you just kind of asked questions and try to find stuff on what the internet was back then.
Yeah.
And so just asking a lot of questions to other people that were leading worship, and just kind of really working through what sounded okay. And so that's kind of how it started. And then I ended up moving to Colorado from the Philippines. I grew up in California, and then moved to the Philippines as a missionary with YWAM. Moved to Colorado, and ended up getting connected with Calvary Church. I grew up going to Calvary Chapel in California, going to Calvary Chapel, Chino Valley is the church that I grew up going to.
Is that
David
I was
Rosales.
gonna say it's not Jack Hibbs.
No, not Jack.
The
Yeah,
other one.
the other one in Chino. Yeah.
Nice.
And so got connected with Calvary Church in Colorado, and was just kind of going. I wasn't even doing worship or anything like that for them. I was just going, and I was in a time in my life where I had kind of walked away from the Lord. But the moment I started going to Calvary and started to really enjoy hearing the Word of God being taught, and really gaining an appetite for that, I just started going and showing up early when we were meeting back in a school, and serving as much as I could. And from there, someone found out that I had played an instrument, and I had led worship in the past. And so they asked me to kind of join them for a night of worship that they had, and asked me if I would lead worship. And it was from then on, I just started getting involved with worship, and now I've been there for 20 years and on staff for 18 years. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Was one of the first songs you played with them one of those 5 from YWAM?
I mean,
You're like,
Probably,
I got one,
probably,
guys.
yeah, probably, yeah. I think the first worship song I think I ever learned on guitar was "Refiner's Fire," like an old Vineyard song.
Yeah.
And I think that probably was one of. I mean, I was coming from a place where I just walked away from the Lord, and now wanting to get serious about what the Lord wanted to do in my life, and so it probably was.
Refiner's Fire.
Refiner's Fire, man. Yeah,
That's the one. Refiner's
it's a
Fire.
great song. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
My heart's one.
it's such a
Yeah.
such a good
Sorry,
song.
I'm not a good singer. But yeah, man. So you've been in ministry for over 18 years. You said 20 years, right? Almost
Yeah.
going on that. But what has kept you passionate and just planted in ministry over all those years?
Yeah, I think it's because I was serving the Lord on the mission field, and then I ended up walking away from the Lord. When I came back, I think that's helped me stay serving It's just this idea of like, I think about like, I think it's in John 6 where Jesus is talking to the multitudes about communion,
Mm-hmm.
and
Unless you eat of my flesh,
unless you
drink of
eat my
my
flesh or
blood.
drink my blood, you have no part of me. And then it says that many walk with him no more.
Mm-hmm.
And then he looks at the disciples, right? And he asks them, are you going to leave too? And I think it's like Peter's response is where I find where my life is constantly. It's like, where else would I go?
Yeah.
You have the words of life.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to believe and know. So it's more than just, I think in the past I had this knowledge about who Jesus was. So there was a belief, but because of my experiences along the way, like to believe and know that you have the words of life,
Mm-hmm.
like you are the Son of God. Like it's both a belief and a experience. And I think being able to have that as my testimony, not only do I believe in Jesus and his word, but I've experienced his
Yeah.
forgiveness, his redemption.
Yeah.
I've experienced his grace, his mercy, how he was able to redeem broken things. And I think so that's really, I think what's helped me just stay committed to serving.
Yeah. It's kind of like, what else am I going to
Yeah,
do?
yeah, where else would I go? Yeah.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. Like, I agree. Someone would ask me, like, what am I going to do? I'm like, well, what else am I going to do with my life? Like, he saved me. He made me, first off, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what's one defining moment, if you could think of one, in worship leadership that deeply impacted you and the way you lead or view worship ministry?
Yeah, I think there have been things, I've gone through some really hard things personally in my life. And I remember one thing that's really impacted me is a couple years ago, I mean, it's been a while now, there was a theater shooting in Aurora, Colorado. I was in the theaters
Oh, wow.
when that happened, and I was in the theater adjacent to the one where the shooter was. But I remember the days after that and all the ministry that was happening. And I just remember having this feeling of like, I don't necessarily want to be here right now, like like in front of the church. Like the last thing I wanted to do is be in front of a bunch of people. But I had this real sense of like, but this is what I was created to do, was to not just lead people in worship, but to choose to worship the Lord in spite of how I was feeling in the moment, or in spite of what I just experienced. And I think there were many moments like that in my life where I didn't feel like being there, but I was reminded that like this is what God has created me for and called me to. And so it really wasn't even about the act of doing something. It was just being um, obedient to what he's already placed in my heart, right? And so I think that's one. I think the other thing is when I first started to actually lead worship, I remember just really um, hearing this question. Like I felt like the Lord was asking me this question of like, if I could not speak or hear or see, like what would worship look like for me? And just being reminded of like my life lived out is my act of worship. Like it's not about songs that I can sing or memorize or whatever. It's not about like the voice that I have or um, being able to compose anything. It's actually my life being lived out as a living sacrifice. That is my act of like my reasonable act of service, right? Worship. And so I think those two things have been really impactful for me with worship leading.
I mean, thanks for sharing that too. And that's pretty crazy. And I could definitely understand that you'd be like, I don't want to do this right now.
The last thing I want is to be in
Yeah.
front of a bunch of people.
Like, I mean, we could even talk to that a bit too, like in ministry, and not even just worship ministry, but there's times when you don't want to do something because you've gone through something or something, you know what I mean? Like you lose a friend, I've lost several friends over the last few years, and you get up on Sunday and it's kind of like, I don't want to be here, but it's like, just like you said too with Peter, like where else are we going to go? And it's kind of like, this is, our life isn't ours anyways, right? It's like to live as Christ, and I don't know, man. That's a hard one.
I think I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like when I decided to walk with Jesus, when I made that agreement, it meant that there were going to be things that I was going to walk into that I didn't feel prepared for or even maybe wanted to. But if he's leading me there, then I made the agreement to like, I'm just going to be there. And so whatever I can offer in that moment is what I can. He doesn't need me to do more, but I can't do less,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't do less than what I've already agreed to do for him.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like even if I wasn't on staff at a church, I feel like my commitment to the Lord would have like he would want the same from me. It's not even like my position at a
Yeah.
church. It's just my life as a living sacrifice is reasonable. That's
Yeah.
what Paul says it, right? It's
Yeah.
just reasonable. Like consider all these things. This is reasonable.
Yeah.
If I can boil it down to that, then singing on a stage for me it's like it should be fun. I
Yeah.
should be able to enjoy it. But when it's really hard, then I have to think, well, but this is just reasonable.
Yeah. Well, let's move on into the heart of worship, or at least worship leadership. A lot of people, they kind of see worship leaders, on stage, pastors, really anyone with a name tag, I would say, at church, and think, kind of there's this misconception that, oh, they got it all together. They must have it kind of figured out. But, you mentioned something, how this was in your email though, but it's easy to substitute a full schedule with a full walk with the Lord. And can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, it's like the story of Mary and Martha, right? Like hurry up, Jesus is coming, look busy.
Mm.
Like this idea of like um my life is full right now. Like I work full time. I'm a full-time husband, full-time dad.
Mm.
Um, our oldest, we have two boys. Our oldest is 23, our youngest is 7. And so that's a huge gap of where their life is at. And so being able to be present for both 23 and 7 makes your life pretty full with
Yeah.
different things. And so I think it's easy to say, well, I'm doing so much with the life that I've been given. I must be, I must be spiritually strong. I must be. And the reality is, I think that can become an easy answer for compromise. Like I know for me, I need to be close to Jesus. I've already experienced where I was already doing all these things, and I still walked away for a time. And so I can't go back to that. And so for me, it's like, no, I need to know that my life is more than just what I do. That can't be my identity.
Yeah.
My identity has to be I'm abiding in Jesus so that I can have this security knowing that he abides in me. And it's not about what I can do. I don't want to hear I never knew you. I see your good works, I see your good deeds,
Right.
but I never knew you.
Yeah. Or like the church of Sardis, and where he says, like, I know your reputation. It's like
Yeah.
that you have this, I know your works, I know your reputation, but he's like, but you're dead.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
dang.
I don't want to hear that. I want to be able to hear like whatever small thing that I can contribute to what the Lord is doing. I want to be faithful with that. And so that I can just know that like more than what I'm doing, I know who Jesus is and he knows who I am. Like obviously he knows who I am. He created me, but like the relationally, he knows who I am because I am spending time with him much more than just getting my set list done for the
Right.
weekend or preparing for whatever services we have. Like those things can easily become a substitute for a healthy relationship with the Lord.
On that note of full schedule, and it's kind of substituting it for our walk with the Lord, how do you fight against neglecting your walk with the Lord versus like you're doing ministry? Because I think some people go to church and they're like, oh, I just did ministry today, and like that was my walk with the Lord, which is a little bit, right? Like it's us being obedient and serving in the ways He's called us, but also there's a time where we got to get filled up, like you said, Mary and Martha. Like we got to be Mary and sit at the feet of Jesus. Like, do you have like a rhythm routine?
The church that I'm a part of, we are very, we have a lot of ministry. There's always something. And I have found in my life where when I'm not spending the time that I need to with the Lord, I get really discontent. I'm not being wise in the way that I'm shepherding the people around me, the people that serve with me. And so I've just learned, like, I know for me, the importance of making, like, and not in like a religious way of like making sure I'm spending time with the Lord, checking off a box, but like understanding like the Lord wants to speak to me. He wants to be able to give me something so that I can offer that thing to somebody else as well. And so it's just, I think for me, it's like it's daily asking the Lord. Um, I want to have like a word fitly spoken for someone today. And even if I don't have that, I know that I'm going to receive that from the Lord. So if I do have an interaction with someone, whether it's within the church building or outside the church building, um, I have something to offer. Within myself, I'm kind of a goofball, and I don't really know what I have to offer. Like, um, I'm sure I'm sure other people would be like, Ian, you have a lot to offer. But for me, I just know like whatever it is that I have within myself, it's I don't know, it's temporal. It's not something that is going to be edifying in the way that like I know what the Lord wants to speak to me. He's going to use that to speak to someone else too. And I've just found for my own like mental health, for my own from my the way that I feel, being able to be still, be quiet before the Lord has been really, really good for me, to just take a couple minutes and to just sit before the Lord. No agenda, no like rushing through something. It's been really helpful for me to learn how to be present with the Lord and not just focusing on the next task at hand.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think you said it a little bit ago, but like not just checking a box, like, oh, I spent time with the Lord today, like check, because then that just becomes just like everything else. Like, oh, we set up, we, had service, we tore it down, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I check, spend time with the Lord. 'Cause I don't know, I feel like God can speak to us in many ways, and there's different times like silence, like you said, we're just like, let's just be quiet before the Lord.
Yeah.
And for me, like I would just kind of redeem the time, if you will, like while I'm driving to work, it's 40, 50 minutes, and like just turn off the radio and just sit and be still. And
Yeah, that's a big, I mean, I don't have a long commute,
yeah.
so I try to do more than that, but like I used to listen to sports radio the whole time I'm in my car.
Yeah.
And I found that like my attitude was the same way as like these sports commentators were. And so the way I was interacting, like if I'm on my way home and I'm just listening to like sports radio, the way I'm interacting with my kids and my wife is that same way, like super, I'm just making commentary. I'm not even like engaged in like what's going on. But I've really found like having a time,
Commentary.
yeah, I'm just making commentary about life, and like I see this and someone comments on that, rather than like when I've been quiet and just I'm actually really just talking with the Lord and like just ready to receive. I'm not using anybody else's vocabulary. I'm not using anybody else's words. It's just me. It's coming back to this place of like when I got saved, it literally was me and the Lord doing business. Nobody else. It wasn't because my parents wanted me to be a Christian, even though they wanted that. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was when I got saved, it was me and the Lord, and it was me and the Lord doing business together. And I want to stay there. Like I want to live my life with that mindset of like I have to do business with the Lord because that's how it started.
Yeah, definitely.
But we can get caught up in like I think in church culture we can get caught up in like, well, this is what it looks like to be a faithful Christian, doing these things.
Yeah, that's you get caught up in that, and you getting caught up in what it looks like for other churches and ministry leaders, and really what it boils in faithfulness and success. Like faithfulness is success. Whether or not, I don't know, just I think we all just think like, no, I gotta have, like, I don't know, as a church planter, it's like, oh well, we gotta have 100 people or something to be successful, and it's like, no, man, like being faithful to God's calling upon our life is success.
Yeah, but it's a harder thing to quantify, right?
Mhm.
Like if I had 100 people, if I planted a church and I had 100 people, that's like tangible.
Yeah,
Like I'm doing something right.
yeah,
But when you think about your relationship with the Lord, um, not committing huge sin,
yeah,
is that a checkbox, or is it just like I did not say a word that I wanted to say when
yeah,
I got angry? Like uh, it's quantifiable in that way, in the sense that like
mhm,
the Lord's doing that work, and I'm not even thinking about those words anymore,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
Responding in a way that like I can see that like the fruit of the Spirit is evident in my life.
Yeah. What's a common mistake that you've seen either yourself or worship leaders in general make when it comes to leading a team and a congregation?
Yeah, I think it's the thing that comes to the top of my head is trying to be somebody that you're not. I think it's good to aspire to be inspired, to aspire to be maybe more than what you have in the moment. But I think also it's really good to just know who you are before the Lord, and be okay with that. Like I remember when I took on my role as a worship leader for the church I'm at now. There was a worship leader that was there before me. And so I inherited that team, I inherited the people. And I remember trying to be like more mature
Mhm.
because I had this responsibility now. And the maturity aspect is great, but it made me feel like I had to be somebody else. And the older that I get, I'm realizing like I need to just be who I am
Mhm.
and not try to be the people that I grew up aspiring to be, like Matt Redman, Paul Baloche,
Mhm.
Brenton Brown, these guys who like are heroes in the faith for me in terms of like leaders in worship, songwriting, and when I started to just be comfortable with who I was, what my voice sounded like, the way that I led, it actually empowered me more than trying to be like them. So
Mhm.
then the team that I have is the team that I have, and it's the people um, that I'm really blessed to be able to work with, and they've been able to see who I am authentically, and not trying to build something that isn't supposed to be, right? So the team that I have is the team that I have, and we work together and we try new things and we try to develop as musicians. We try to stir each other up onto good works. Um, but I think a big mistake is trying to be a worship leader that you're just not
Yeah.
like. Um, if you're trying to be more of a hype kind of a person and
Yeah.
you're just not.
You're not.
Like I remember, I think Skip Heitzig said, um, being cool is like being a 7 foot person. You either are or you aren't.
Oh yeah. Nice. I've
And
heard
so
that
I'm like,
before.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's super great. Like I
Right.
just am who I am.
Yeah.
And um, I don't need to try to be somebody else. Like I I have pastors in my life that are great administrators. Like they just have a great gifting of being a great administrator. That is not who I am. And I aspire to be better
Yeah.
at like administrative gifts. That's just not my strength.
Right.
And so if I'm always comparing myself to that, then I'm always gonna look at like even my strengths as like a weakness.
Right.
And so I would rather just strengthen the things I'm already strong in, and then give some effort and to grow into the things that I'm not really good at.
Mhm.
But I'm never going to be Matt Redman,
Yeah.
right? God created one guy to be Matt Redman,
Yeah.
created one guy to be Paul Baloche,
Yeah.
created one guy to be Brenton Brown. I just have to be as faithful as I can
Yeah.
as Ian. And I can be inspired by those guys, but I can't be them.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, going like you got me thinking sports analogies after your commentator one, but it's like a quarterback, like being like, oh, I want to be, whatever position, the running back or the wide receiver, and it's like that's just not your gifting. Like you gotta stay in your lane, but God's orchestrating it all together to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up, I love basketball.
Is that your sport?
That I mean, I don't know if I have a sport,
But your
but
favorite one
it's
to,
my favorite.
yeah,
It's my favorite sport. It's what but like I'm also
Lakers.
I'm a huge Lakers fan,
All right.
because I grew up in LA.
Yeah, that's all right.
But I had to face the reality of I'm 5'6".
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get in the
That might
NBA.
not.
I'm not ever gonna get in the NBA. And so it's the same with like my role in the church. Like if I want to be somebody different, but that's not who God created me to be, then I feel like I'm always just gonna be wanting more than what God has. And that to me that's a quick way for discontentment, right?
Yeah,
It's just
definitely.
if I can just serve the people that I am serving with now and I can do that faithfully, the Lord, I think, is going to bless what that work looks like. So I don't have to try to be somebody else or try to make a name for myself.
Just be you.
Yeah.
God's gifted you to be you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Next little subject, creating engaging worship experiences. But what goes into building a meaningful set list that actually engages people in worship and rather than just singing songs,
Yeah. So to me, they have to be engaging, but they also have to be accessible, right? So like I love music, and when people are like, oh, I love music too. And like, no, but I love music. Like um, and so often I think of like, you don't love music the way I love music. But I can love music to the point where if that's all my focus is, then I miss out on this huge group of people that want to be engaged and maybe are engaged sensory wise by the music, but that's not accessible to them, right? So I think when you're thinking of like worship leading, set list, you yourself want to be able to enjoy that as a worship leader. You want to have songs that creatively make you think, but you also want the congregation to have that access to that. And so I'm always thinking through, okay, if we do this song, what key should we do that song in so that more people can sing it, not just the really like good singers who can sing,
Like
higher, or lower. And so I think for me, when I'm talking about creating set lists, I'm thinking of the key for it. I'm thinking of the dynamics for it. Like, are there peaks and valleys, or is it just really mellow, or is it just really fast? Because a set list of 5 songs that are all just really fast can get really tiring. And then set lists of 5 songs that are all really slow, it can kind of be boring, right? So when I'm talking to worship leaders, you want to think through like dynamics. Are there peaks and valleys in your set list? Are there peaks and valleys in your songs? Because that's actually a lot more engaging than to just have all these songs be in the same mid-tempo range. I used to have harder rules of like you start with a fast song, and then second song you go down, and then third song you go back up, and then the fifth, get to the fifth song and it's like really big and huge. And I don't necessarily have those hard rules anymore. To me, it's, can you create something dynamic with those 5 songs? So even if you start slower, can you build something dynamic to where you're ending where it feels like you're not just at the same place where you started. To me, those things are really engaging.
Yeah.
And then content, like what is it? Like I love singer-songwriters. There's guys that I listen to that write worship music, but they're not necessarily congregational worship music. And so doing those songs in a congregation setting may not work. So I have to think of songs that are also going to be accessible to people, where it's a song that they can sing. It's not too wordy. We're not repeating the bridge or the chorus 7 or 8 times, right? Because that becomes kind of overbearing as well. And so I always think of like what's engaging, but also what's accessible.
Yeah. So on that note, like, so how do you balance like song familiarity versus putting in some new songs? So like when you're introducing new songs versus old songs, do you kind of have a rhythm for that or just whatever you're feeling?
We do have a rhythm. I don't know if it's like a set rule. If we introduce a new song, I think we've come to the place where it's good to have that repeated at least two weeks in a row, sometimes three. But then it needs some time to rest so that you can reintroduce it again. So I think we have found a rhythm of, if you're going to introduce a new song, so for us, we have multiple worship leaders. If we introduce a new song, we're committing, all of us are committing to do that song at some point so that there's repetition, so that the church can get familiar with it. We also have music playing in our building 24/7. So even when there's nobody there, there's worship music being played in our building. And so if there's a new song that we want to add, we put it in that playlist so that when people are there, they're actually already hearing it, even if they don't know what the song is.
It's like
so that
subconsciously.
so that when we do introduce it, they actually already know the melody, they already know the rhythm of it. And so I think there is kind of a idea for repetition. And then when the way that we kind of pause on songs that maybe have been overplayed, we just kind of take it out of the rotation, and then when the Lord puts it back on one of our hearts, like we just pop it back in, and we usually take some time we don't add new songs right away. So if I heard like Phil Wickham just released a song last week, I haven't actually.
King is in the room.
Yeah, I haven't actually even listened to it yet.
Me neither. I was like, didn't he already have a King is in the room song?
True.
Anyway, sorry. I digress.
So we wouldn't just add that because it's a new song.
Yeah.
Like we would
wait.
Yeah, like I wanna like chew on it for a little bit. Like I wanna, actually read through the lyrics. Is it engaging? Is it accessible? Is it biblical? Like all these things that we kind of do with the songs that come out. And so I would say, unless it really like ministers to my heart, I usually take some time to like add a song for our team. And the way that we schedule out for us as a ministry is we schedule our musicians out 2 months in advance, and then we schedule our set list 2 weeks in advance. So even if we were going to do a new song, it's probably going to be at least 2 weeks before we actually lead it in the church.
Nice. So it gives people time to like prepare.
Gives our musicians time to prepare.
Yeah. No, that's good. Do you ever find that there's like a, generational, like, oh, you got the older crowd, senior citizens who want like some hymns, they're like, oh, but then you got the young crowd who's more, I don't even know what the young crowd is these days.
They want a vibe.
Yeah. But like, do you find a tension between those two ever, or does it feel like it's pretty just like everyone's?
I think every generation has that tension.
Yeah, just unavoidable.
Because it's preference.
Yeah.
Right? It has nothing to do, I think for me, it really has nothing to do with like, this is what the Bible says worship music is.
Yeah.
It's preference. And I'm open, like if someone wants to have a dialogue about their preference, I'm open to like having a dialogue about preferences.
But what if someone was like, hey, I really don't like something, like would you like say, electric guitar, it's too loud, or they don't like it, like would you politely disagree with them, or would you be like, hey, we're not going to have electric guitar this weekend?
I would politely disagree with them.
Yeah. Nice. No, that's good.
Yeah. I think unless it was like, unless I really knew like there were other people, like if it's one person, I would probably politely disagree with them.
Mhm.
If it was like five people and three of them were people that I trusted to tell me honestly if something was too loud or off, um, then I'm like, okay, well, what can we do to like fix that problem?
Yeah.
But if it's one person, it's probably more
Yeah.
their preference than
Right.
anything.
All right. How do you create a culture where your team, your worship team, feels more like a family rather than just part of a band? Like, or do you have anything that you do?
Yeah, um, I would say some people are just gonna feel like it's a band, right?
Mhm.
And I would say it's probably more so them. If you have a mindset to create an environment where it's more like a family, that starts with you
Mhm.
as a leader. So not necessarily that you have to like have people over your house all the time,
Mhm.
but it's that if there's something going on in your life, that you're just open with that with your people. 'Cause that's to me, that's how you build trust. Like if I'm gonna tell you something that's really hard, can you please pray for me? Then they're gonna feel really comfortable sharing those things with me too. Um, but it's also like having an understanding that if someone's going through a really hard thing, I need to be able to hold space for them to be human.
Mhm.
Even though we have a high standard, like for us, like we hold people to a high standard of growing in the Lord, their spiritual walk, and also their musicianship. But there is also room to just be human in those things. And I've found that the more grace there is around our relationships, in terms of not grace for like allowing sin, but when people make mistakes or when people are late or they've just had a bad week, so they had to text 30 minutes before rehearsal, I'm like, hey, I'm just really having a hard time. I think grace in that does create a more forgiving family, hopefully more forgiving family atmosphere
Yeah.
within our culture. So that when we do have something that we're challenging them in, it's not as abrasive to them
Mhm.
when we have that ask. I remember reading too John C. Maxwell leadership book. I think it's called like Leadership Gold. But one of the things that I've learned is like our relationships are like bank accounts,
Mhm.
and at some point you're gonna have to make a withdrawal. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna make a huge mistake, and so at some point I'm gonna have to make a withdrawal and relationally with someone. And if I did not relationally invest and deposit
Mhm.
in that person's life,
Yeah.
I can bankrupt that relationship really easily
Yeah.
because I've just not invested anything.
Right.
And so for me, it's I want to be able to invest.
Mhm.
So even if it's like a phone call at like 5:10 during the day, and I'm like, I'm about ready to go home,
Mhm.
like ready to just be at home and chill. And hey, can you, I just need prayer. Or hey, can I come into the church? I just need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Right.
I'm gonna make this investment
Yeah.
because I know the return relationally is gonna be way more fruitful than me just being able to say I got home
Mhm.
when I wanted to go home, unless there was really something I needed to be at home
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Me
Um,
neither.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's big. And like thinking of me being, I've played in many worship teams, but or even bands, Sean's brother Seth, we used to jam and all that stuff. But there's something like special when you get with a group of people and you just kind of like you just you're jamming, like, and you just find the pocket, like as a bass drummers, like you
Yeah.
find the pocket, find the groove. But then there's also those times, you play with other bands you're unfamiliar with, and to your point of like making withdrawals, like I think sometimes we can make critiques, and it's just critique after critique, which is totally normal and fine when we're trying to create something and sync and, on time and, all this stuff. But then it's like, if you never deposit like, hey, good job, it's like, you're just going to discourage them and to where they don't want to do it anymore. Like, why? You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Like if there's actually no relationship and all I do is critique,
yeah,
that I wouldn't want to serve with me.
right.
Like like
Like, it was just constantly like, ooh, that was the wrong
my
quarter.
only
Speed up.
interaction with
Slow.
you, my only interaction with you is when you're telling me I've done something bad.
Yeah.
That's actually not a
No,
relationship.
it's not life-giving.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's not life. Yeah, and that's the other thing is like like I want to be able to serve with people and have fun. Like being in the presence of God, the Bible says there's fullness of joy. And we get to do something that honors the Lord that is fun. Like if you're a musician and you play an instrument, it should be fun.
Yeah.
And it can become something that is out of compulsion, like you're forced to do it when you don't have a good relationship with the person you're serving with. But then also like it starts to feel like a chore. Like I'm showing up here, it's a chore. I'm just doing it for them. I don't want that. Like I want to be able to like serve with you and have fun doing this while we serve the Lord.
I know. If you could give a challenge to the people watching, listening, worship leaders, maybe they're just ministry leaders, not necessarily worship capacity, but a challenge for them that they could take home today to try to apply to their life, what might that be?
I know for us as a worship ministry right now, like our every year I try to give like a banner or like our vision for the year. This is the banner for the year for us that we're gonna put emphasis on, we're gonna focus on, we're gonna give you training on. And so for us this year is celebrate and cultivate. Or you cultivate what you celebrate, right? And so for us, it's this idea of I'm not necessarily naturally an optimistic person. So celebrating isn't necessarily a normal thing for me. Like I'm growing in that of looking at a situation and then being able to say like, I can celebrate this. And so for us as a worship ministry, we we are really taking time to give energy to celebrating each other. So we're asking questions rather than saying, "Hey, how are you?" We're saying, "Hey, what is God doing in your life that's exciting?" Right? And I think that's an easy way to get away from the, "Hey, how are you?" And
Yeah.
fine. Oh,
Fine.
cool, fine. And then you just walk away. Yeah. But just saying like, "Hey, what's exciting in your life right now?" Or what is God doing that's exciting you? Because then it makes you think about it not only makes you think about what is exciting in your life, but like how is God good right now? Like I think there's a lot in our lives as our teams, people on our team, we just have a lot of really difficult things that we've either just gone through or are going through. And because of those heavy things, it gets really hard to just celebrate God's goodness and his faithfulness, even though we know God is good and we know that he's faithful. And so we're really trying to give emphasis to building this pattern in our team of we're actually going to be way more expressive in the way that we're worshiping the Lord. So from the stage to the way that we interact with one another. Another thing for us too is like we're giving emphasis on not necessarily just the spiritual gifts of like what's your spiritual gift, but we are really wanting to give focus on the fruit of the Spirit. And so like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, long suffering, self-control. And so I've noticed within our team too, just by giving focus on those things, we're learning to be more encouraging. We're learning to be more engaging with one another. And so I would say if there's something that I would challenge people in is what are the things that you can help kind of shape what your team is going to look like and do. So for us, it's just small things like just hey, can you make sure you're not in the green room 15 minutes before service and you're engaging with people in the sanctuary. And then ask them this question, like, what is God doing in your life that's exciting? Or what can I pray for you right now in this moment? Like, that's another thing. What can I pray for right now in this moment? So that I'm not telling you, hey, how can I pray for you? And then I walk away and then not pray for you. But it's like making myself accountable. Hey, right now I want to pray for you. What's one thing that I can pray for? Because that's a lot more of a pointed question than a vague question.
Calvary Church Worship, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the...
That's it. That's yeah.
Yeah, Calvary Church Worship has just recently released Hallelujah Anyway. If you guys have Spotify, Apple,
It's anywhere you stream music, it's on there.
All right, check it out. One of the songs that Ian helped write and record. Check it out on all platforms there. If someone wants to connect with you more about worship ministry, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can email me. I know that ages me, but you can email me at it's Ian IAN at Calvary CALVARY co.church, calvaryco.church. My Instagram handle is Ian is overrated. You can DM me there also. If you want, you could text me. You can have my phone number. It's 720-808-1329.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice, pulling an old Ed Taylor.
Yeah, I learned that from my pastor.
Yeah. Here's the last song, or last question. Just what's your pocket go-to song? Say, like, in case of emergency, Ed's like, hey, I need 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
What was your...
There's probably a couple. Build My Life is, I feel like it's an easy one and super familiar.
Yeah.
And then also, what's that? Oh, now I forgot the title.
It's not the pocket song.
Great Are You, Lord. Great Are You, Lord. Yeah, Great Are You, Lord. Because it's super familiar.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, Ian, thanks for being on, man. This is good. I think it's hopefully going to be encouraging to many people out there. So for those of you watching, listening, wherever you're at, if you subscribe to the podcast so you can get more episodes like this, make sure you leave a rating or a review. It helps more people to find content like this to help encourage other ministry leaders wherever they're at. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.